All right. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Talkin Ball Live with Pat Leonard. Training Camp Eve. The Giants veterans have reported to East Rutherford, New Jersey. We have news coming out of the Giants facility. Also, excitement that as you sit here now live with me on the Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard YouTube channel at PL on NFL, we know that we are about to hit the grass in East Rutherford. We're about to see Brian Dable and Joe Shane's team in 2024. For the first time, we spent a spring analyzing the depth chart, seeing pluses and minuses, some development from some rookies, and projecting what the Giants were going to look like in year 3 of this regime. But now, finally, we get to see for real, pads on, real football, and we see the Giants taking shape as a club that's trying to bounce back from a difficult 2023 season that saw a lot of turmoil, a lot of dysfunction, and the Giants are hoping to write a new narrative, a new story, and get back to the playoffs like they were in year 1 under Shane and Daboll when they defied expectations, which is what they are going to have to do now. I wanted to start by pointing out something very interesting to me. Darius Slayton spoke to us in the spring. We know that he stayed away from the Giants facility and from practices for a good while in the spring. And at the time, it was considered a decision by Slayton regarding his contract, wanting to be paid differently, wanting to have his contract altered. But at the time, I pointed out to everybody that to me, there couldn't be a way that Slayton actually believed he was going to get a significant bump from the Giants front office based on how they had handled him and some other contract situations before. And at the time, I think I told you guys right here on Talkin Ball Live that to me, that sounded more like a soft trade request or desire than anything. And now Darius Slayton has gone on Keyshawn Johnson's podcast, and Slayton, Slay, as they call him in the Giants locker room, always a great interview. He says to Keyshawn Johnson on his podcast, I don't play football to just play. I want the chance to show that I'm among the best in the game. And so he was specifying that he has done as much as he can with the opportunities he has received, but it would be nice to have more opportunities. And so he said this. That was what was going on into this offseason, what it led to. You're trying to maximize your dollars, but at the same time, I kind of wanted to make sure it was known that if being here and being a part of the offense and being a big part of the offense is not the thing here, then that's okay. But we'd either like to move on and go somewhere else or make the investment that implies that I am that. So that was where we ended up. So that was Darius Slayton saying that this spring, when he was not in the Giants building, what he was hoping for was either an acknowledgement in his contract that he was significant to this offense or a trade somewhere else where he would have more opportunities. Obviously, they put some incentives in the contract. Slayton came back to the team. He said, above all, he loves to play. He wants to win. He wants to be a good teammate. We know those things about Darius Slayton. He's been a great Giant. It's great to have here. I still think he's going to end up, if he's on this team for a full season, one of the best receivers on the team, right? It wouldn't shock me if he was right behind Malik Neighbors when all is said and done this season, if he spends a full year on the team, that he would be right there as the second receiver instead of the leading receiver, which he's been, I believe, for over the last 5 years. But I say all this to say, if Darius Slayton felt in the spring like a trade was something he might desire, we talked about it during spring practices, OTAs, and minicamp. The Giants were rolling out Jalen Hyatt, Wan'Dale Robinson, and Malik Neighbors in their 11 personnel pretty consistently with Slayton behind them. Of course, he could end up earning more snaps, proving more reliable as he often does. But if their depth chart remains the same during training camp and they continue to give the draft picks most of the run, to me, you have to keep an eye on whether a Slayton trade still could happen, not only during potentially training camp if he's not seeing the opportunities, but also in the season, if the Giants season doesn't start the way they want. And this is clearly a player who is interested in seeing a lot more targets and a lot more opportunities. So he could be one of the first players to watch if the Giants are selling off. Also, Evan Neal goes on the physically unable to perform list. We'll get into that. First, want to tell you about Boom Chaga. Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard is brought to you by the Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, a natural extract loaded with anti-inflammatory, immune boosting antioxidants and heart healthy compounds. Easy for me to say. You can easily pour this natural liquid supplement into any of your favorite drinks. I put mine in my coffee every morning and immediately feel the difference. I personally feel a post-workout like energy boost with Boom. Chaga also has the ability to lower cholesterol, reduce inflammation, and improve immune and heart health with its beta glucans and antioxidants. Go to boomchaga.com today to place your first order. And if you use the discount code TalkinBall25, here it is on the top of your screen, or you access it through that QR code right there, you'll get a 25% off your first subscribe and save order. Right now, that means a month's supply costs you only $30. Start feeling the difference today at boomchaga.com. Also going to review Hard Knocks episode 4, of course, which dropped tonight. Joey B, a loyal follower, subscriber, and participant, says, everyone like and subscribe to the channel. Joe, thanks for getting us started. Thanks for saying that. We're also sponsored here by Estate 98 Coffee and Esencia de Cafe from El Salvador. Dates back to 1798. Drink it all the time when I'm doing Talkin Ball. And also by Bet Online, the world's most trusted betting platform, your number one source for everything online sports betting. Right now, you can receive a 50% free bet of up to $250 on your first deposit to bet on anything from the Olympics to baseball to Formula One racing. BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker or unwind with one of our over 150 slot games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Use the promo code BELIEVE for your 50% free bet credit on your first deposit up to $250. BetOnline, the game starts here. All right. Joey B starts us off. He says, how did they have so many different options and plans laid out? That's for sure in this Hard Knocks episode. Yeah, definitely was interesting to see the permutations and the conversations about the draft board with Joe Shane talking to Steve Tisch and John Mara about scenarios. Very interesting to see Jaden Daniels, Drake May, Caleb Williams, and the 3 wide receivers in that shot. Though I did also report on draft night that depending on how the board fell in front of them, there was a chance back at 6 that there was talk of offensive linemen in the Giants draft room. There was just not a consensus on one. And so that ended up coloring how they operated as well. But offensive line was part of the conversation. Interesting to see that Daniels was a player that they still had as a potential target, because I heard that his visit to East Rutherford, wasn't the best visit. But clearly they were enamored with the player, the person, the talent, enough to have him on their radar as draft night approached. Of course, you saw Brian Daboll meeting with some of these prospects, sitting slouched on the couch with his feet up on the glass coffee table. That was an interesting NFL head coach player dynamic. I found it interesting when he pressed Jaden Daniels right away and said, "Do you want to be here?" Jaden Daniels seemed caught off guard by that question. And even though he said yes, definitely sounded like a player who was playing that politically as well, which I guess at that point in the process you have to do. But I thought that was interesting. You know what I really liked? I'm very interested to follow Rome Odunze's career. How about Rome Odunze's question to Joe Shane and Brian Daboll, asking them, what is your biggest need character-wise on the team and in the locker room and in your leadership group? And then Brian Daboll almost sounding defensive about, oh, well, we prioritize that. That's something that's really big here. What a mature, interesting question from a college kid, now a professional athlete, obviously. But Rome Odunze, obviously, it added up a lot that this was something that teams saw in him, was not just a really good player, but also a person who would help their makeup right away. And obviously you saw that the Giants had him as an option depending on how the board fell, if Neighbors was off the board, all those things, even in a trade back potentially with the Chicago Bears at 9. But just very interested to see that, because even Brian Daboll admitted that Rome Odunze would be a great fit to them. And they ended up going with Neighbors, who they decided was the player who would help the most. You saw even Mike Groh, the wide receivers coach, even though he liked all three, telling John Mara that if all three were on the board, he would take Neighbors. So that's even if Marvin Harrison Jr. was on the board, he would take him. I cracked up and thought it was great listening to Joe Shane's son. I think his name was Carson, saying that he should trade up for Jaden Daniels. And he said, you only get this job once, might as well try to win. I like that. Just the go for broke. I think confirms for anyone who doubted at this point, obviously, that the Giants were very real about the quarterback process. Any suggestion by anybody that their visits and the time they spent on that position was some sort of, smoke or misdirection. I mean, you've got to be absolutely kidding me. I hope anybody who put a tweet or a story or that sentiment out there in the wild goes and deletes that or retweets it and acknowledges it even better, because that's crazy. But we told you here that the quarterbacks, that the Giants were all over them. And as you see, really, it would have ended up being a quarterback if they could go on and gotten one. They just got blocked out from it. Joey B also says, what's up with Evan Neal? I think it's time we move on. He just can't stay healthy and the upside won't ever be realized, I don't think, unfortunately. Yeah, Joe. So when Greg Van Roten visited, I noticed that, just talking to some people and just reading the tea leaves, honestly, and understanding how the team has operated all offseason and been very close to it. They just made significant investments at the guard position, 3 specifically, right? Jermaine Illuminor, who's a guard tackle, John Runyon Jr., and Aaron Stinney. And for them to have a free agent guard who started last year and had a strong season for their offensive line coach in Vegas, when we all know, it's like, wait, why wouldn't you bring in a tackle? Why wouldn't you bring in a corner, right? It's all these thoughts about who they're bringing in, and here's a guard. And to me, it made me raise my eyebrows, also understanding the reporting I did in the spring on Evan Neal, which was that in the spring, Evan Neal was doing individuals, even though he was limited. And then late in the spring, clearly the Giants backed him off. That's something even Brian Daboll admitted. They backed him off because of something late in the spring, right? Usually when that happens with a player, it's they get on the field and maybe they suffer a slight setback, right? He was out there. He was, doing his work with the trainers and this and that. So it wasn't like he wasn't on his feet. But it had all of the symptoms of, hey, this player just got dialed back for some reason, nothing obvious. So maybe as he's rehabilitating, he had a slight setback. Now, they didn't say that out loud during the spring, but that's what it looked like. And Brian Daboll projected that part of the reason Evan Neal wasn't on the field late in the spring was that he projected he would likely be ready for the start of training camp. But now I hope you guys are following along on the YouTube channel. I posted the second that Greg Roten visit happened, about an hour and a half later, I was on here on the channel telling you guys something's up here. I think it's Evan Neal. Let's wait and see. And sure enough, the next day, the veterans report, Evan Neal goes on the PUP list. Of course, we saw Aaron Robinson also go on the PUP list. I know there's always this hope in the back of fans' minds. Maybe this is a draft pick who, can get healthy again and help the team. But unfortunately, at least at this point, not gonna be for right now. The good thing for Evan Neal is that the PUP list right now just means he's on it. He's on the active PUP list. So the second that he's healthy enough to pass his physical and practice, he can do it and come off the PUP list. So it's not like going on the PUP for Evan Neal means he's out for a certain amount of games right now. We're not at that point. So that's the positive thing. But obviously, we will get more, I'm sure, down the road as I answer more of your questions into some options there and how the Giants are going to proceed. Looks like I was just about to remind you guys, but Ryan did it for me. Ryan checks in with a $10 super chat. Thank you so much, Ryan. Guys, if you want your comment or question answered first, or go to the top of the chat, it could just be an opinion you want addressed and read out loud and me to react to. Whatever the case is, you can purchase a super chat or a super sticker, just like Ryan did. I see Joel did beneath Ryan as well. And it will rise right to the top. I will address it immediately. I really appreciate it. It's a great way to support the channel, and also really livens it up, spices it up. And Ryan, I can't thank you enough. Ryan says, let's kick it off, Pat. Dave's meaning Brian Dable, needs to get his feet off the coffee table. No doubt. I mean, that was a weird look. First time attending practice on Friday. Any tips for me? Ryan going to training camp. I love it. Ryan, yes, put some sunscreen on, wear a hat. I have not yet purchased one of those like gigantic hats, maybe almost like like you're in the wilderness, like to block out your neck as well. But if you're someone who doesn't like putting on sunscreen, but you still need to protect, the back of your neck, invest in a solid, like Jumanji style hat. That's what I would say. Usually at this time of year, you're out there, it gets hot, you get dehydrated. Make sure you have some agua ready, some water, stay hydrated. And, pay attention to, Ryan, every day you go out there, different things are happening. So, for example, one day maybe the cornerbacks and the secondary are signing autographs. The next day it might be the quarterbacks. The next day it might be the offensive linemen. Plus, they have like events and kind of stations for kids. Some of them, the lines will start really early and get long quickly. Some of them you can just run up and do. So I would get there even earlier than you think you need to, just to get the lay of the land. And if there's something there, like a bounce house or whatever the case may be that kids want to do, make sure you get there early, especially because if you want to watch the practice, you also want enough time to maybe run around and do some of those things and not miss the actual football. So that's what I would see. Binoculars is a great thing. If you have binoculars, bring binoculars, because there are 3 fields out there. And so where you are seated, depending on where you are seated, you may be near the one of the 2 fields parallel to each other. So that means one of them will be much further away from you that way. Also, there's a 3rd field in the back. So a lot of what you watch is going to be spread out throughout. So I would, if you have them, bring a pair of binoculars. So let's say the quarterbacks are doing the most of their throwing in individuals in one area, or let's say Neighbors is on another and you want to see most of him and focus on him. You can be able to zero in as much as you can, have time that you have to do so with the family and everything, obviously. But those are some main pieces of advice. Also, if you see me, shout out and say hi. That's the primary tip I have for you. Hopefully those ones help you though. Get there early, sunscreen and or hat, hydrate, binoculars, and make sure you kind of peruse and don't miss something that's kind of set up, for the kids or for the family or for fans that you don't realize until it's too late. Good question. Have fun on Friday. I'll see you out there. Joel, what's up? Joel checks in with a $5 super chat, says, I'm convinced that Evan Neal might have surpassed Ryan Leaf as the biggest bust of all time. Joel, I think, well, first of all, I think it's very fair to say that at this point, this is a number 7 overall pick by Joe Shane, and the arrow's not pointing up, right? I think it's still frustrating at this point that the ankle injury initially gets misdiagnosed as a sprain. Then, you're rehabilitating it as a sprain. Then, oh, wait, it's a fracture. Then you have to have the surgery. Then you get dialed back in the spring. Like, obviously, this appears to be a situation that was made worse and could have been avoided, or at least limited the damage, rather than, because we've talked about this. You want to have your offensive line and your starting 5 playing together as early as possible here. You have a new play caller full-time. You have a new offensive line coach. It's the same offense, but you also have at least two new starters on your front 5. By the way, did you catch that Carmen Brasillo mentioned in Hard Knocks while talking to Saquon Barkley at the Penn State Pro Day that part of the reason they liked John Runyon Jr. was also that he said he gave them center flex behind John Michael Schmitz if necessary. That was interesting to me. Not something that was on my radar, but is now. But as far as the Evan Neal bust factor, Joel, I think I'm ready to give Evan Neal this year to show me whether or not that's the case, because last year, I really felt like, let's just think about Andrew Thomas's trajectory. and how Andrew not only struggled early, right? He was listening to a lot of the noise. Wasn't playing well, all those things, right? And then he also had an ankle surgery. He had that injury that he was playing through where he wasn't 100%. And then not only did he have surgery on that ankle, then he had to have another surgery on it going into year 3 because the first surgery didn't fully address everything that was wrong. Going into year 3, Andrew Thomas came out after having a surgery that finally corrected what the issue was. And he's past his rookie hiccups and listening to the noise and reading too much Twitter. And what did he become? Right. I'm not saying Evan Neal is going to become the top 10 tackle that Andrew Thomas is, a guy who got a first place vote as a left tackle in the NFL on ESPN by Jeremy Fowler, who, if you didn't see it already, I have a great episode with Jeremy Fowler from ESPN, NFL Insider with ESPN, talked a lot about those top 10 rankings. It went around the league, talked some Giants, talked some free agent pursuits, some other point, catch up on that episode. Also an episode with Super Bowl champion Willie Colon that I'm going to post probably tomorrow morning, Tuesday, where we talk about, Brian Daboll's job security, the Jets, the Dallas Cowboys. He thinks that Micah Parsons was exposed by some opposing offenses last year. So that's something to watch. But yeah, Joel, back to my point, a lot of tangents here. Sorry about that. But I think I'm ready to give Evan Neal this year, and then I will come to that judgment because, listen, first of all, guy who played 3 different positions in college, you have him at right tackle, and now he has this injury, and also the team understands not only that they have to do right by him, but think about it from the Giants' perspective, from Joe Shane's perspective. I mean, who wants Evan Neal to succeed more than Joe Shane? I mean, it's only a determination between whether or not he completely whiffed on an offensive tackle, for his franchise quarterback, or eventually hit on one and helped turn around the offense. I mean, that's a big deal. But then also, of course, we haven't talked about this as much lately, but does this become a situation where guard ends up being put on the table for Evan Neal? Does that move end up being put on the table? Does it only get put on the table when he fails at right tackle again? That's the way it looks like at the moment, if that happens. But I think my sense at the moment is that what the Giants are doing right now is whatever gets the player to the regular season healthy. That's what they're looking at and that's not just Evan Neal. Now, obviously, though, these guys need to play football, and it's concerning. It's just concerning. It is, even though it didn't surprise me based on what I saw in the spring and what I understood. It's concerning that when you start training camp, Evan Neal is not going to be lined up at right tackle with the starting 5. The question, of course, is who is going to be there. Is Jermaine Illuminor going to kick out from left guard to right tackle to start with the first team? Or are we going to see Josh Azudu there because Evan Neal is still relatively close? I personally think at this point, with Evan Neal not healthy, even if Illuminor is practicing as the left guard, it wouldn't shock me if the Giants sent him some snaps at right tackle just in case. But again, you don't want to gum the works up either. You don't want to do what you did with Josh Azudu last year and practice him at one, play him at another. Gets really confusing. But Joel, thank you so much for the super chat. Bill says you're going to have to ignore half the chat pre-live. I understand that, Bill. And I apologize for being a few minutes late. The reason is because I had a call with a source and I was on the phone, and I intended to be on the phone till about 9:00, jump off, watch Hard Knocks, and then jump on right after Hard Knocks at about, 9:42, 9:43. But my phone call went longer. It was a productive one. It was a helpful one. Unfortunately, you can't do it all at once here. So when I'm doing Talkin Ball Live, I'm not on the phone with this scout, let's say, or that player. And if I'm on the phone with this general manager, then I'm not talking to you guys. Or if I'm on the phone with this coach, then I'm not writing a story for the Daily News. And so a huge part of my job is prioritizing my time. And, I always tell young journalists and reporters that it's like, you have to make daily, hourly, minute to minute decisions about what has to rise to the top. What do you need to address? What's most important? But obviously what I always tell you guys, what I enjoy most is being here with you guys, talking about the team and hearing what you guys think about your favorite team. Joey B says, Pat, how did everyone look today? Give us the scoop. So we weren't allowed there yet, Joe. We're only allowed there to start on Wednesday, even though the players reported on Tuesday. Media was not allowed in the building. It was closed to the media. So we did not see anyone. But I would add also that Jalen Mills, non-football injury list, free agent signing and safety, / corner, but really safety. And then Stanley Thomas Oliver, corner, also on an FI. So 2 other guys that you're not going to see on the field to start camp. I think right now where we stand, Joe, is, Daniel Jones is ready to go. As he's told us many times, he expected to be ready to go. Daniel Jones is ready to go. I think the primary thing I'm watching walking into camp is the quarterback, the way they do the snaps at quarterback. How much work does Drew Lock get with the first team? Who's at right tackle with Evan Neal not there? And obviously Malik Neighbors is going to be part of the show, but also the cornerback 2 competition. How is the defensive personnel shaking out? So a lot to think about there and a lot to monitor on day 1. Looking forward to it. Let's see. Joe says, by the way, I heard that I hated that Saquon Diana Rossini interview on The Athletic. It was so damn good. I don't want to like Saquon so much, shaking my head. It was pretty good. It was interesting hearing him. You know what surprised me about Saquon? He did a really good job, I thought. But you know what surprised me? And I knew a little bit about this from kind of following the situation. But isn't it interesting how he underestimated, he said, how much hate he was going to get from Philadelphia, how much hate he was going to get from the Giants fans for signing with the Eagles. It was, he said that his whole management team advised him, listen, you might be willing to deal with it, but just so you know, this is going to stir up a lot of stuff if you go to the Eagles from the Giants. See, Saquon was so much, that was the most interesting part to me. Saquon just explaining where his mind was compared to where people assumed it was. And he was purely going about, here's my market. Here are my options. I'm looking at it. I'm making the best decision for me, for the team, for the future. And then it's almost like he comes up for air and says, whoa, I didn't realize, I was going to be written off and eviscerated for just picking a team. But obviously it's pretty naive of him to not understand how much hate there is between Eagles and Giants. I mean, come on. You got to understand that a little bit. And I have to think maybe there's a touch of maybe Saquon playing to the crowd a little bit there. Cause how could he not know that? Of course he would know that. I don't fully buy that. Let's see. Sad part of the interview is he looked real happy to be wanted in Philly and sad that the Giants didn't want him. Yeah, we will see where it is going with Saquon. Obviously, I know people didn't want to completely relitigate the Saquon situation, but it has been interesting to look at the Hard Knocks treatment of it and kind of go back over it, see what was and what wasn't. Let's see. Intel says Evan Neal is a bust. Let's see. Joe says he wants to see Isaiah Simmons at safety. I think maybe we can get some gap years on the contract. It could pay big dividends. I think Simmons, his best usage is as a Swiss Army knife. You can't put him in the deep half and ask him to be a pure deep safety. If you're asking him to be a run-stopping linebacker inside, you're not using his best skills. You got to use him as a pass in pass coverage. You got to use him as a blitzer. You got to use his athleticism. That means moving him around. Bill says, my starting offensive line would be Andrew Thomas, John Runyon Jr. at left guard, John Michael Schmitz at center, Greg Van Roten at right guard, and Jermaine Illuminor at right tackle. Roten, Illuminor, and Brasillo all worked together last year and were good enough. Make it happen. Yeah, and here's the thing about Greg Van Roten. And I think I saw somebody down here suggest that or ask what it would cost to sign Van Roten. I don't know the exact number that would get it done. What I do know about Van Roten is he's coming off a strong, maybe his strongest season in the NFL as the right guard, as you said, for the Vegas Raiders with Carmen Brasillo as the coach. So we know that he welcomes that coach. We know he welcomes that fit. We know Brasillo values him, right? The other thing, though, is that put the money aside for a second. Van Roten is just on a base level. He is a starting level guard in the NFL. That is what he proved he was last year. So you're not paying him, crazy money like you would pay a guy that you signed, obviously. Like, he's 34 years old. So you're not signing him to, an Illuminor type contract. That's not what you're doing here. But if you could sign him to a 1-year deal with a significant but reasonable salary and some incentives included, to me, what you need to do is get to a level where you're paying him to be a starter and you're signing him to be a starter, a guy who's going to compete to play. Because the bottom line is, this is a player who, at some point, if it's not the Giants, he's going to, you have to imagine, and this is just, I'm using Van Roten as an example. There are other veterans at different positions around the league who are operating the same way. They know injuries happen. They know guys struggle. They know teams need to solidify their interior, and that a lot of NFL teams in week 1, 2, 3, and 4 are going to need to add players with pedigree, with experience at those positions. So they don't have to be in a rush necessarily to jump at an opportunity that doesn't guarantee them significant snaps and chances to play. So that's what we need to keep watching with Van Roten with the Giants is Evan Neal. How long is he going to be out? Is Illuminor kicking out to right tackle? If he is, now that makes sense. Van Roten comes in, and he and Stinney are battling for the one guard spot while John Runyon Jr. has the other. So now you have competition, you have depth, you have a solution at right tackle. That's the way I see it working out if Van Roten becomes a Giant. That's what I see. All right, let's see. All right. Bill laughs. Well, the Chiefs seem to like Giants receivers. Was interesting to see that Kadarius Toney, not that he's being used as a running back. I mean, we've seen the Giants, pitch the ball to him, and we know that he has that skill set. I thought Kadarius looked like he was running pretty slowly in that video that I saw on X of him taking like a pitch and running kind of to the outside along the right sideline. I've seen Kadarius Toney run. I do it for a living. I watch these guys, and I don't know what that was. Is he rusty? Is he coming off something? I don't know, but he looked like he was laboring a little bit. Joe says, do you think Darius Slayton is salty? He's been here and putting in the work, and he's been the best we've had at the position. Now you got the shiny new player and neighbors, and maybe he's in his feelings. Well, it was before the draft that he made, the decision to stay away, and it wasn't a holdout, but right, obviously like a spring holdout of those optionals. So that was before the neighbors pick. Obviously, though, he had a feeling of where they might go. It was more about Joe. I don't think it's in his feelings about the neighbors pick. I think even before the neighbors pick, he was looking at, okay, Saquon's gone, right? Here's where our offense stands. I've led the team in this category of receiving yards for the last 5 years. Are they going to acknowledge that? And how am I going to have an opportunity to make more money? Because let's just face it, and Darius Slayton has said this as much, and everybody knows it, but this offense was terrible last year. And so Slayton is also, from a selfish standpoint, not in a bad way, you're protecting yourself to say, well, I would love to be a featured player on this offense to try to help it grow. But if not, he has just come out of a season where being on that offense was a drag on a lot of people's careers, right? So being a part of that Giants offense last year was a drag. And Darius Slayton's perspective, or anyone's perspective who's saying, well, maybe it would be a bit better elsewhere, it was purely, that's why I'm so glad he just said it out loud, because it makes so much more sense and connects the dots. He's just talking about wanting better opportunities. That's it. And whether it's because it's a bad offense that can't get the ball out, or it's because he's not on the field as much because there's all these young receivers now. I think, Joe, it's all those factors about how is this going to play out, and is he going to get the chances, or is it better to send him elsewhere? John P says JJ McCarthy was not even a factor at the end there on the draft board. Yeah, well, we learned that on draft night when JJ was on the board when the Giants picked, and they didn't, I mean, if there is a quarterback in your purview at that moment that you're considering taking and he's on the board there, you take him. So the second that the Giants took Neighbors there and not McCarthy, you knew that they never valued him at that point at all. It actually ended up going back to something that somebody told me earlier in the process. They said to me that the Giants felt like McCarthy was a pretty good prospect, guy who could develop, but someone that they would envision more as like a second rounder. And you hear a lot of people say a lot of things. So sometimes you're judging like, wait, is that person selling? Are they pushing? Is that smoke? Right? Like, are they trying to steer me off the scent? What it is? But it turned out that was exactly where the Giants stood on JJ McCarthy as far as like valuing that player. There were obviously things they liked about him, but not at that point. They didn't believe he was going to be the franchise guy that they needed at that spot at pick number 6. Right. Let's see. I do not know what number Neighbors is going to wear. That'll be one thing we'll be looking for. Let's see. John P says anyone in the top 10 has to do quarterback work, especially since most of them become available in the short term. Definitely, John, but there are top 10. Like the Giants have had years in past where they have picked in the top 10 where they have not scouted quarterbacks the way they did this year. So it is where you pick for sure, but it's also what their need and their roster was. And as you saw, Joe Shane, and this is why Daniel Jones had some edge to him right in the spring when we talked to him, and he just said it wasn't that fun watching that draft, is because as much as the Giants organization has said to Jones directly and to us, listen, we're not giving up on you, but the reality is if you had these injuries, we need to protect ourselves. We need a quarterback. It's the same thing as like Saquon being told, hey, bring back the best offer and we'll match it if we can. It's like they're not saying get the hell out of town, but you're kind of hearing that to an extent. Now, obviously, Daniel Jones is entering training camp as the projected number 1 starting quarterback for the Giants. That's how they're talking. That's what we should be seeing on the field. That's what they say we will see. And of course, you even see behind the scenes during Hard Knocks that, they obviously have a high opinion of Daniel as a person and as their quarterback and as a player. I mean, they paid him $40 million a year. I hope they do. But John, certainly this was really them not getting a quarterback was about them not getting to the pick to get one. And of course, they liked the receivers. That's why they were factors. And like I said, my understanding was there were offensive lineman conversations, not about the trade up to number 3 or 2, but there were offensive line conversations at 6, but there wasn't a consensus is what I was told. And then the receivers, obviously, they had a high opinion of Neighbors. Gary says, great work, Pat. Good episode tonight. Thank you, Gary. Thanks for saying that. Really appreciate that. Let's see. Joe says he will be in the house Sunday with the wife and the 2 little ones. Yeah, stay in the AC if you can, right? Joe says, is it better by me or in the VIP section, Pat, at training camp practices? Well, I'm lucky enough to be able to stand down on the sidelines during practice at training camp. So we don't do that, for full practices during the regular season. So we get to go down on the field if they're on the backfield during the regular season for the first, 10, 15 minutes. It's like a couple periods of practice, and then we're out. Or if they're on one of the 2 fields next to each other that's closer to the building, we stand on the patio outside the back of the Giants building, and we don't actually go down to the field. But during training camp, we are brought every day down to the fields, and we obviously there's places we can't go, but we're allowed to walk along the sidelines kind of on the warning track there and get a look at the players in the field and the team up close. So that to me is by far the best kind of way to experience it. VIP is nice. I mean, you're on the patio, you get a good look, the players and, staffers and coaches and, front office people will walk up, say hi to you and, sign autographs, those kinds of things. But, you don't always get the best look at all the fields either. So that's kind of the trade-off. Let's see. Cheers to everybody. Drinking my Estate 98 here. See, the more questions are rolling in. I'm going to get to the next couple in a few. I want to remind you, about Boom Chaga right here over my shoulder. Talking Ball with Pat Leonard is brought to you by Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, a natural extract loaded with anti-inflammatory, immune boosting, antioxidants, and heart healthy compounds. You can easily pour this natural liquid supplement into any of your favorite drinks, like I put mine in my coffee every morning, and immediately feel the difference. I personally have felt a post-workout like energy boost with Boom. Chaga also has the ability to lower cholesterol, reduce inflammation, and improve immune and heart health with beta glucans and antioxidants. Go to boomchaga.com today to place your first order. And if you use the discount code TalkinBall25 or you access it through the QR code on your screen, you'll get 25% off your first subscribe and save order. Right now, that means a month's supply costs you only $30. Start feeling the difference today at boomchaga.com. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, next day listening to this episode, thanks for checking in and subscribing to the Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard podcast. If you don't already, please subscribe to the YouTube channel at PL on NFL. We break news here. We provide instant analyses. We do our arrivals at games. We do our Talkin Ball lives. Mondays and Thursdays, for the most part, we're going live tonight, post Hard Knocks, preview training camp, a little bit different, but we'll get on our Monday, Thursday schedule. And then during the season, we do Talkin Ball lives after games, the night of the game, Sunday night, usually, obviously. But if it's a Thursday night game, if it's a Monday night game, whenever the Giants are playing, I'm at the stadium, at the game, coming out of the locker room from talking to your favorite team and players and writing for the Daily News and filing, and then jumping right on YouTube with you and going live and telling you all the injury updates, all the information I have from the stadium, from the game, analyses of the key plays, what players had to say, projecting into the next week, talking about the coaching dynamic, the front office, personnel decisions, and everything I was able to observe. I was talking to Ryan earlier about binoculars, bringing them to training camp. I have binoculars when I'm in the press box as well, because I have a good view of the stadium in most cases at most of these stadiums. But also, I like to watch what's happening maybe up close, whether it's on the field in certain cases or looking at the sidelines and monitoring player reactions, injury treatments. Maybe sometimes a player doesn't come out for a snap that you expected and he leaves the game and you're looking to see whether he's in the locker room or on the sideline, right? There's a lot of things that you're keeping tabs on, all while you're tweeting, writing, taking notes. During games, I have the game on my iPad on delay, and then it's on another different delay on the TVs above me or in front of me, wherever I am watching, plus the game live in front of me, the binoculars watching the sideline. This is part of the process of how I try to bring you guys a 360-degree, kind of game day experience, but also viewpoint and information. This is all the stuff that I do on game days. But I really think that the Talkin Ball lives after the game, I know Joe, Bill, Joel, all you guys who have been here for a long time now, you can speak to everybody else about how great those are. And I think really how awesome they're going to be this year, as everything kicks up a notch with the 100th season and just more excitement with it reset at 0-0 and the Giants having, a chance again, we'll say. Bill says, we get it, Pat. You have a job to do on showing up a couple minutes late. I appreciate the understanding. Let's see. Joe Winograd says, Evan Neal on pup. Thoughts? My thoughts there, Joe, are basically that it's a good thing that he's able to come off pup whenever he just passes a physical. It's not like he rules him out of games yet. Obviously disappointing that after the misdiagnosis of the ankle sprain and then the ankle surgery that he's still not ready for training camp. I mean, it's been a long while here now. He should be ready based on that surgery and that recovery timetable. But the good news is, after what looked like him dialed back significantly in the spring, whether it was a setback, Evan Neal has been on his feet. We've seen him out there on his feet. And so I think the hope is that even though he's on PUP now, that it won't be for too long. But at the moment, Joe, my mind just goes directly to how do you get your starting five ready without moving the pieces all over the darn place, right? Like if Illuminor isn't going to play right tackle and you don't want him playing there and you want to get your interior right, then you're just going to end up having Josh Azudu or Matt Nelson or somebody else out there at right tackle right now. And you keep Jermaine Illuminor there at left guard and Runyon at right guard, and you Schmitz in at center with Andrew Thomas at left tackle, because at least you have 4 of your 5 playing together day in and day out, getting the reps, getting familiar with each other. Not that other people don't deserve to, get moved up and have a chance to compete. That's not what I'm saying. Obviously, if guys get a chance to compete and Aaron Stinney tries to beat out somebody, or Jake Kubas, right, the undrafted rookie, those kind of guys, I'm all for that. But I'm just saying my main thoughts go to the offensive line was part of, one piece of what helped decimate last season before it even got started. If there's anything that needs to happen this year, they need to walk into week 1 feeling like they like not only their plan, but that they've seen something during the preseason on the field day in and day out to make them think that they're on the same page, their chemistry is working, and that they can move people together without committing penalties. And, staying healthy, of course, is something every year. But that's what I think, Joe. I think ultimately my main thoughts are disappointing you don't have your front 5 out there together to start. Hopefully it's not too long before they are. Joey B. Comedy asks, any word on Justin Pugh? He's coming back. Is he coming back, or is he going to retire and promote Love Sacks? Well, Justin's a very good businessman, so he's got a lot of business partners. Landed me a Love Sack, I should point out as well, which I'm very grateful for, because those things are money. Love Sack, if you're listening, I'm a believer. If you want to join the sponsors of Talkin Ball, hit me up, because I'm a big time believer in the Love Sack. Let me tell you. Actually, Zach Gelb, the radio host, works his butt off, does a great job. I believe he had Justin Pugh on his show recently, and Pugh, I'm pretty sure, said on Zach's show that he would like to play in the NFL and he hopes it's with the Giants. Now, that's no different than what, Justin has said, like going back to earlier this offseason, like, let's wait and see. But obviously he loves the makeup of the team. He's really his identity. Obviously he played with the Cardinals for a while, but he identifies very much as a Giant, loves being here, was a huge fabric part of the locker room and of the team last year when he got here, really helped steady a lot of things, including the offensive line, but also the offensive line room and team chemistry. He's a leader. To me, it's a no-brainer to have him on this team and in the building somehow. Now, Pugh obviously feels like he has something left to give in football as well. So just like we were talking about Greg Van Roten, Justin Pugh is another kind of player and person who, he doesn't just want to hook on and ride somebody's coattails. Like, he wants to help out and play and prove that he can help a team win again. And so that would be, I think, the question there. But that's a phone call and a question and a conversation I'm probably going to have tomorrow, is to dig more into whether that's going to be a possibility. It's possible the Giants, again, would treat that situation the way they did last year, like break glass in case of emergency. And I guess it might also depend. Obviously, Van Roten's in the mix with that visit. But even with Justin Pugh, you also made all these additions to guard already. Kind of would be like, okay, if you said to Pugh, we would love to have you here, you'll be in the building all season, no matter where we have you slotted, but we can't promise you're going to get significant playing time. What's Pugh's decision there ultimately? That would fall to him. And I think that would be something we would have to wait and see on. Brett says, what's up, big boss? I agree with Bill. Thomas, Runyon, JMS, Van Roten, Illuminor. Todd says, I think Rome Odunze is going to be special. Keenan Allen says he feels Rome is more advanced than Keenan was as a rookie. That is especially high praise. Deilla NYG says, how's it going, Pat? Hey, Deilla, what's going on, man? Great to see you. He says, been a while since I've caught you on here live. Hope all is well. Yeah, no, everything's great. I got some last second beach time in before the start of training camp. Much needed too. Had some great vacation time and some off time with the family throughout, the early part of the summer. But also just a nice long weekend to really, soak up the rays and soak up the sun. And I'll be honest with you guys, I love covering football. I love NFL football. I love the fall. But I'm not the countdown 100 days to week one guy or 50 days till the start of football. To me, I like everything as it comes. Like, yes, I love covering the Giants week one against the Minnesota Vikings. I love going on the road the next week to Washington to watch them face the Commanders. I love going to Germany, to see them play the Carolina Panthers and hopefully be covering playoff games and then going to the Super Bowl for, I think it would be the fourth straight Super Bowl that I've covered, I believe. But I also like my vacation time and my time off to take a break. Like, you need some balance. So I always think that's funny when everybody's counting down and says like, oh, I'm sick of summer. Like, I need football again. It's like, it'll be here, it'll be here. But for purposes of Talkin Ball live and for the community that we're growing here, I also think that as much as, yes, I'm excited for football to be back, I think we've proven here on this channel that essentially year round, there's something to talk about with the Giants. I mean, I do really value that kind of mid-June to mid-July respite, but especially with draft season, what it's become, and honestly, the fact that there's so many great content creators and also intelligent, like plugged in fans like you guys who are on top of what's going on day in and day out and asking the right questions, pressing me for answers. If I don't have one the previous week, you're coming back the next week and trying to check out, did I follow up on it? What's the latest? So, that I think has really gotten me especially excited for this season and really for like the full calendar year of the NFL from here on out, because I've been covering the NFL now since 2016 full time. But this year, this past 8 months or so has just felt different because of what we've been able to generate here and the kind of offshoot conversations and the analyses we're able to dig into here. It's just so much more dynamic and less static. I love sitting down and writing a really good story for the New York Daily News, because a lot of times you don't want to ramble on something. You have a point to make. You want to say it. You want to make either an argument or stress a point to people in a way that's concise and understandable. And there's definitely something to be said, I think, in a lot of ways, for not being verbose, for presenting something to you as a fan cleanly and smartly and well researched, right? All those things. But I also love this format where we can unpack even, the tangents and the variables and the underbelly of a lot of the key issues, and not just with the Giants, but around the NFL when it came to draft season, dissecting what all these different teams were going to do, where things stood, trade rumors, right? Conversations, me breaking news at the start of some of these live chats. You never know what we're going to be doing on Talkin Ball Live. So I really do love it. Speaking of tangents, me going off again. Brett says, do you think Elijah Chapman, the defensive lineman, gets in the backfield as a fullback? Ooh, interesting question. You know, that's an interesting question. Brett, I'm giving you credit if I see him out there at fullback when we walk out there at training camp. I think, frankly, at the moment, they're still trying to solve the question of who's playing next to Dexter Lawrence at defensive tackle, and even just that rotation, like what's that going to look like, right? Who can help them there significantly? So, to me, that's the first place to look, right? I'm watching that interior defensive line. Can a guy like Chapman contribute there? But definitely, hey, the more you can do, as they say, the more you can do. And also, kind of an open question right now about what the Giants' full backfield is going to look like, because Devin Singletary, obviously, they signed. They got Jacob Sailors there now. A guy came from the UFL. Eric Gray, Jason Corbin, Tracy, the draft pick from Purdue. But it still looks like they need an established downhill runner. And so, do they add a fullback or unorthodox type fullback to the mix to try to get some ground and pound going and establish a run game? Even if they go a route like that people aren't expecting. Yeah, maybe. But Yeah, I think defensive line, like if you have a defensive lineman, you sign to be a defensive lineman and you have a hole there at that position, that's where you're first looking. Dilla says, did anyone notice on the card that Shane gave his daughter to pick a name from? Daniel's name wasn't on it. Oh, no, I think Dilla, he was saying to his young daughter, who should I pick? And so he was giving her a list of names to pick. And I'm pretty sure that's what that was. So I think he was saying, like, it wasn't who do you want our quarterback to be? I think he was saying, who do you want me to pick at number 6? And so he was giving her a few rookie names. I believe that's what that was. Dave says, I missed training camp in Albany. Fans could get really close. I remember the famous joint practice with the Jets. That was the day I realized how unreal Brandon Jacobs was. Yeah, we've all had that moment where we've either seen Brandon Jacobs for the first time in person or when we watched him play or whatever, that practice that you're talking about, what he did for the Giants during his impressive career. We've all had that one moment where we kind of stood up and said, who the heck is that? Right. Or I knew Brandon Jacobs was good. I didn't know he was this good or whatever the case is. And like I talked to him about when he did the Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard podcast, basically, like, there were people who, plenty of people who did not have any interest in tackling Mr. Jacobs, like guys in real NFL games on NFL defenses who did not want that smoke. Can you blame them? Yeah, Dave, you know what's funny? I missed the Albany days. Like I wasn't on the beat when they were doing Albany training camp practices, so I missed that opportunity, which I know those could be long days. It was the two-a-days, all that, and obviously you're away from your family for weeks on end, that kind of thing. Probably hear about that. But it was a special experience, an experience that was, of course, like, specific to the Giants and how they operated. And so I didn't get a chance to go through that. So I would have liked to at least experience what that was like a little bit. Joe says, Pat, those post-game lives are so clutch on that damn 3-hour ride home for me from the games. Yeah, no, definitely. So Joe listens to my Talkin Ball live post-game, every Giants home game, when he's driving home. And so that's actually perfect timing, because if you think about it, when the game ends, I'm down in the locker room talking to the coaches, talking to the players, and then I'm back upstairs and writing. So generally it's about, an hour and a half after the game. So that gives you time, whether it's to get on the road or maybe you're home by then, or maybe you're hanging out on the couch getting ready or you're watching Sunday Night Football, or you're watching the 4:00 games, whatever. It's just a nice, steady rhythm, being able to digest that win or that loss, whether you're celebrating or wallowing, and being able to kind of unpack it together. Really, I think, valuable way to process the games and for me to get you guys information immediately. And typically what I do too is, obviously I'll be doing my reporting in the daily news, but a lot of times you end up like, there's certain things that end up in the paper. And then there's some things that are, nuts and bolts that maybe you're going to get in Monday's website for Tuesday's paper, or they're things that I'm still running down, but a lot of nuggets and a lot of information that, I'm going to bring to those Talkin Ball live post games first. Like, you're going to get it first. And if it's stuff that I get post game that I can break news there with you guys, I will do that. Instead of putting it on Twitter, I'll say go live, have some news to share, right? We'll do it that way. So really looking forward to that. Joe says, are you going to be in Pittsburgh? We're going to that Monday night game. Oh, absolutely. Night before the game in Pittsburgh, Joey B. What do you say? What do you say? Sunday night in Pittsburgh. Could be rowdy. Sunday Night Football game watch. Brett says, will practice be indoors tomorrow, Wednesday? Rain possibly. We don't need a slip on the first day. Let's see. So in East Rutherford tomorrow for Wednesday, the first practice day, it's projecting, at least on my weather app, it says a chance of rain, 10 a.m., 30% chance of rain, is what it has for me. But yeah, it looks like the chances of rain are escalating as the week goes on. Um, but yeah, 30%, no higher than 30% chance tomorrow, at least according to what I'm seeing. So hopefully don't go indoors. But yeah, that would be disappointing. And that's not something the Giants want either, like because when they go inside, they only have one field they're working on and they have to consolidate everything they're doing. Whereas when they are outside, they have three fields to work with. So that's a dramatic kind of adjustment that the Giants have to make if it's raining and they have to go inside as well. I'm a big believer, frankly, in handling the elements unless it's dicey and outrageous. You don't want guys slipping and getting hurt for sure, but you do want guys to play real football and kind of you know get acclimated to being uncomfortable too. So there's a balance there, 30% chance of rain, grass is a little wet. Is that reason to go inside? No. Thunderstorms, lightning, right? Catastrophic. Yeah, get inside, right? That's how I feel. But you're absolutely right. You got to be careful with the guys' bodies. No question about it. Undefined says, my ADHD is loving your game day process. Undefined, I got to tell you, maybe one game day before the game, I'll kind of do a video of how my setup looks so you guys can see it firsthand. Put that on YouTube so everybody can see. You probably be interested to see how that all works out. Mel's, what's going on? Great to see you. Joey B says the line needs continuity. Agreed. Let the four play where they're supposed to play. Intel says let the Justin Pugh situation go. Yeah. Hey, that could be what the Giants decide for sure. And especially, like I said, if a player wants to be only wants to sign somewhere if they can play and you can't guarantee them that opportunity, sometimes it makes its decision for itself. Mel says we can scout ourselves, guys. Missing pieces in the NFL, hidden, and NCAA, building the city in a beast. I've already started upgrading. Mel's, I am trying to figure that out. That looked like a Mad Lib that I failed. I believe that's what that was. And I appreciate you being here, checking in, supporting the channel. Appreciate you. Joe says, did you see they had us predicted as going 4-13? I'll throw up, Pat. Joe, that's what I predicted the Giants to do, 4-13. Where did you see them predicted to go to win only 4 games? Please let me know that. Aaron Martinez, great question here. What's been your top 3 experiences as a reporter? Wow, that's a really good question. The first thing, I'll just be honest, the first thing that came to my mind when you asked me that was, now it wasn't a particularly fun moment, but being in the Rangers locker room after they lost the Stanley Cup was really something. Like Henrik Lundqvist slumped there at his locker, head down with a hat on, couldn't see his face for the longest time, pads still on, his legs sprawled out, just like has given everything and come up short. Guys like, Dan Girardi and Mark Stahl and Anton Strawman still in their uniforms, Brad Richards, like, guys with tears in their eyes. That was really something. Also, if you remember the Martin St. Louis, right, the team kind of, galvanized by his addition, his mother's passing, he scores that goal, everything. I mean, it was crazy. It was like all the stars were aligning. That came to mind right away when you asked me that. Let's see. I think when I broke the news at the owners meetings in Orlando in 2018 that the Giants and the Rams had conversations about Odell Beckham Jr., that was electric. I mean, it was so cool because, we work so remotely, reporters all over the country covering teams nationally, whatever. And everybody in the NFL was in one place. And for, 24 hours to 36 hours to 48 hours, like the story, one of, the main story that was driving a lot of the conversation was one that I had broken and written. And, I was walking around the halls, talking to people, talking to sources, making phone calls, sending discreet texts, meeting people, double checking things, finding, several sources on things and all that, and putting that story together, and being at the party, talking to people about it. They had known about my report, people wondering where I got it. Where'd you hear that? People confirming it for me for the fifth or sixth confirmations after the fact, essentially saying they would have never acknowledged it, but now that I've reported it, I'm on track type stuff. That was really cool. And then let's see, my third top experience as a reporter. Let's see. I'd probably say, geez, it's a tough one. Well, hard not to say being at the Super Bowl in general, like getting credentialed for the Super Bowl and going to the Super Bowl and covering it is just, you're in the place that everyone wants to be. You're at the game everyone in the world essentially is watching. For that day at that time, you're essentially at this, this is obviously exaggerating it, but you're like at the center of the world's, universe as far as what people are paying attention to. It's Super Bowl Sunday, and you're one of the lucky few to be able to take it in, be there, whether it's on the field, in the locker room, in the press box. That in general, I guess, is what I would say. But that's a hard question. I have a lot of things that are memorable. No Mets, no Nets, no Jets, says Pat. What's up? Any comment on the Jets, Giants being New Jersey teams? Well, I mean, I think it's something that it's hard for like a Giant. Say you work for the Giants or you're a Giants fan and somebody says you call yourselves the New York Giants and you don't even play in New York. It's hard to have a rebuttal to that because it's true. And it is a little weird, right? Like it's a little strange, but we all know why, obviously. Like, where can you afford to build as expensive as it still is? Where is the land available to build, right? Where are you able to build? What's convenient for these teams? What can they manage? What can they manage with, local governments, land, prices, all those things. And obviously the history of how these organizations have evolved. So there's history to it as well. I think no Mets okay, so let's put it this way. The Dallas Cowboys play in Arlington, and when you're there, it always feels weird putting Arlington, Texas as the date line instead of Dallas, but you can't write Dallas. They don't play in Dallas, So, even though obviously that's in the greater Dallas area, like I think that's weird too. I think that's weird too. So, they're not the only team that makes me kind of scratch my head, Yeah, right. Exactly. Right. The Commanders, exactly. Playing in Maryland, right? All those things. Yeah, exactly. So it's not just the Giants. All right, let's see who else we got going here. Hey, no Mets. Thank you for the super chat. Thank you really for checking in. Thanks for supporting the channel like that. Really appreciate you. All right, let's see. Joe says he's rooting for the kid from Holy Cross. Hope he becomes something. I wish they'd go get Dalvin Cook and take a flyer on him. Didn't look like he had anything left in his legs. DeIlla says Jaden Daniels' name wasn't on it. It was May, Neighbors, Harrison, and Adunze. Oh, so that was the list. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you meant Daniel Jones, DeIlla. Sorry about that. You were saying that Joe Shane wrote a list of names for his daughter and Jaden Daniels' name wasn't on it. Got it. Sorry about that. I thought you were talking about Daniel Jones. My mistake. Yeah. Well, like I said from the beginning, May was the guy that the way I saw it, the way my sources saw it. So that would back that up, but that was interesting. I didn't notice that actually. Mel says, something is messed up with our franchise. In 3 decades plus, I've never seen it run like this. Minus 500 for too long, stinking up the East Coast. NFL champ has it too easy. Yeah, the Giants need to get out of their own way. Yes, there are the teams that are beating them, right, to suffer these losses. Other teams are beating them at their own game. But it's also, we watch this Hard Knocks. We watch how the Giants are operating. We watch how they turn over their regimes and bring in new coaches and general managers. Like, at some point, you need to make better acquisitions, better picks. You need to get the players and you need to make it work. It's on them. K Saint says, what's up with Aaron Robinson? Don't entirely know at this point, K Saint. I'm going to get to the bottom of that Wednesday at practice, and we'll have that information for you. But really just a guy who hasn't been able to get healthy, stay healthy. Hard to imagine they're going to continue to try to count on a player, right, from a roster standpoint that you can't count on to stay healthy, unfortunately. But we'll get more information for you on that. Todd Banks says, considering both Malik Neighbors and Brian Daboll are hotheads, do you see them eventually screaming at each other on the sidelines? That's a really good point. You know what was weird? Daboll had this conversation with Neighbors at the combine. He asked him about how he handles adversity and being a hothead. And then he told this story to be relatable about how he has a temper too. And then he's like, oh yeah, I understand. I'm the same way. And then the scene where we see him talking to Neighbors in Hard Knocks, it was like the same exact conversation, like word for word, almost the same exact conversation. Very strange. And also, being passionate is one thing. Being a maniac and losing your cool and pointing your finger at people is different. Like that's not the same thing as being a receiver who's frustrated he's not getting the ball. It's not the same thing. Brett says, I used to tell my Eagles buddy, 6'4", 264. Brandon Jacobs was a beast. They ran him outside too much. I used to hate when they threw it to him on the run out of the backfield. We need another big back. Yes, they do need a big back because they need, if anything, they need some sort of running game to take pressure off Daniel Jones, not to just be an offshoot of the passing game. That's what they need. And Todd, by the way, your question cracked me up about Neighbors and Daboll just there about hotheads. So they're going to be screaming at each other on the sidelines. I would say this, going back to that, we saw how Daboll unloaded on Daniel Jones, throwing the tablet and everything, and Daniel just sitting there. Imagine him doing that to Malik Neighbors. Imagine that. Or, you could see, maybe something happens like, if he's really Daboll's guy, it could be the kind of thing where it's like the player does something wrong and then Daboll yells at, the position coach instead of the player. Like we saw with, like Saquon and the running backs coach in Jacksonville, their first season, like sometimes the coach strategically like, okay, I'm not going to light into this player like I would light into that one, but I'll just light up his position coach instead. Right. That could be there's precedent for that. Joey B saying dinner and a cigar in Pittsburgh. Yeah, we'll see. It definitely some maybe some like Sunday night football game watching. That's what I'll commit to. I don't know exactly when I'll be getting in, what the plans are, right? Getting in maybe with some of the other guys, like people on the beat. Maybe there's some sources in there I have to meet up with, but definitely want to get to a bar, get to a spot, have a drink, have a cigar, say hello, watch some football in Pittsburgh. If we can do it, that'd be nice. Let's see. Brett was saying he wished you used to wish they threw it to Brandon Jacobs on the run out of the backfield. Oh man. Yeah. Freight train coming downhill, right? They say Sunday is all together day at camp. What is that going to be about? Let's see if I have some information for you on that right here. All together day. I think that's, to be honest, I think they did that last year. I think it has to do with, I don't know. They make it a special day for fans to try to be honest, I'm trying to come up with what I thought it was last year. And I don't know, Joe. I'm not going to lie to you and say I do, But my guess is anything special that they're doing this year is probably going to tie into the 100th anniversary a little bit. So, like they're going to be big on kind of continuing to push and promote and incorporate their history into things. So to me, it's probably a day where they're going to do something special for fans that they haven't done on other days, but I don't know exactly what that's going to be. Oh, you saw on ESPN, they had broken down by each division. Giants were 4-13 and Panthers were 3-14 as the two worst teams, I think. Yeah, that could easily be it, or it could be flip-flopped. Jake from Jersey didn't make top 3 experiences. That's right. Sorry about that. Right. They save money building in the swamp. That's right. Chronicles, of course we can meet up at camp. Of course we can meet up for sure. DM me on Instagram, PL on NFL. DM me there when you're at camp. I'll see it and we'll try to say hi and connect. Absolutely, for sure. Brett says, what's your starting offensive line, Pat? Your preferred starting offensive line for the Giants? Brett, to be honest, I think my preferred starting offensive line would be Andrew Thomas, left tackle. My left guard would be, I think I would probably be interested in working Aaron Stinney and Evan Neal there and having a competition there. John Michael Schmitz at center, John Runyon Jr., right guard, Jermaine Illuminor, right tackle. Now, obviously, if you bring in Van Roten, you're bringing him in to put him at right guard because he's a right guard. He hasn't played left guard since 2019. So if you brought in Van Roten, then I think it would look like Thomas left tackle, Runyon Jr. left guard, Schmitz center, Van Roten right guard. And then I guess you're looking at Neal right tackle there. Yeah, see, to me, I'm not saying, listen, Jermaine Illuminor, people need to understand this too. Unfortunately, yes, this could be an upgrade, right? Getting Runyon Illuminor. But Illuminor is not a perfect player. Runyon's not a perfect player. Like putting Illuminor at right tackle isn't going to instantly mean that position is solved, right? That said, though, can you get a better baseline on a down-to-down basis from Jermaine Illuminor than Evan Neal right now? I think a lot of people would bet that you could. But obviously, it would be much better to have Evan Neal, the number 7 overall pick, still in a rookie contract, be that player for you out there. But to me, you got to settle in on, where is Evan Neal best suited? Where should he be playing? If it's right tackle, you need him out there. If he's not out there, you have to work the 4 on the other 4 positions to get them together. I still question, though, Brett, is Jermaine Illuminor really a left guard? I mean, he was there pretty exclusively, essentially, during the spring. I think everybody expected him to work at guard at times, but not to only take left guard snaps, which is what he ended up doing. And what they said, they projected would be what he would be doing in camp. But I'll couch, again, we're talking on the eve of camp. So some of you may be listening to this on Wednesday, and we've already had more information from watching them on the field. But just remember, Brian Daboll did say he thought Evan Neal was going to be ready for the start of training camp, and he's not. So, we always talk about on here, they say the expectation is, and it's like, don't take to the bank whatever comes after those words, right? We know that with this regime especially. Do not take that to the bank. So, Illuminor and the Giants all saying he's going to be a guard. He's not going to be training a tackle. He's a guard. He's a guard. He's a guard. Things change. Or maybe they don't want to divulge things too early, and suddenly we could be out on the field and he might be splitting snaps between guard and tackle. But Brett, not dodging the question. I think my original answer is my answer. Thomas left tackle, see if you can create a competition with Stinney and Evan Neal at left guard. John Michael Schmitz center, right guard, John Runyon Jr., right tackle, Jermaine Illuminor. That's what I would say. Intel says, Pat, I have no hope for this season. Intel, I don't have a lot of hope either. I think the hope is connected to 1, the pass rush, Brian Burns addition. 2, Malik Neighbors, what he can do for the offense and hopefully what he can help unlock in Daniel Jones. 3, Brian Daboll taking over as full-time play caller. how much of a difference can that make? These are some of the elements of quote unquote unknown, right? That could create some either promise or intrigue or excitement that things could change, right? Um, I just think, their schedule's tough. And also, like I said, it all depends on how they start, how they come out of the gate, playing Minnesota and Washington. I think that's going to dictate a lot. Um, you know, Part of my reason for agreeing with you to an extent, Intel, on the hope for the season is the Giants frequently struggle to keep guys healthy. And obviously every team has injuries, but the Giants really have been decimated for several years now. I mean, it's basically going on a decade of having injury problems, and you can blame coaches or way people practice or whatever it is. But the bottom line is it's been a problem. It continues to be a problem. And so if the Giants stay healthy, like healthier than they typically do, that's how you maybe exceed expectations of people like myself and Intel. The problem is they haven't stayed healthy. So if they sustain a couple injuries to key players, as they seemingly always do recently, then you're talking about being up against it with a roster that has a handful of, kind of A-list / key pieces, but is short on stars, right? For the most part, and also lacks depth. And listen, there are other teams in those situations. We're just talking about Giants season and, why you could have hope, why you couldn't. So the injuries is something really to watch, and something I'm watching very closely during training camp is how they keep players healthy, but also prepare for the season. Because last year, that Dallas game, 40-0, they weren't ready to play. And they were trying to prioritize getting their team healthier to week 1. And they were resting guys and dialing them back, and it was counterproductive, and guys still got hurt, and the team wasn't ready to play. So they need to prepare them better, prepare them more. And that involves playing real football in training camp. Let's see. What's up with Aaron Robinson? He's been hurt for 2+ years, various different injuries. Some people just struggle to stay on the field. I mean, Azeez Ojulari isn't Aaron Robinson, but same idea of like, there are just some guys who, for one reason or another, it just seems like they can't stay on the field consistently enough to get a full read. And like I said, at a certain point, you start to say, well, we can't count on this player at this position, right? And that's not even being unfair. And that was part of the Daniel Jones conversation this year. You saw it in Hard Knocks. It's like, well, wait a second. Yeah, you like Daniel and you like Daniel, and maybe I feel a little bit less about him as a player, but we all paid him $40 million, but the guy hasn't been on the field a lot. And, part of that was not protecting him with the offensive line, but that was also a part of the evaluation. So that, that goes with all those things. Killer Cam 66 says, when is Daboll speaking to the media? When does he? When he does, Pat, please hammer him on the Evan Neal ankle situation. Thank you. That's all. Definitely will, Cam. We'll get to the bottom of that. That's a critical issue to be discussed and asked about. Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll scheduled to meet us, the media, on Wednesday, July 24th, approximately 9:15 a.m. prior to the 10 a.m. start of practice. So we'll have updates and insight on X and Instagram, and especially on YouTube. Guys, if you don't follow already, subscribe to the channel. And my YouTube shorts, I'm going to be using those to create daily updates for you guys from training camp. Now, we're also going to have our Talkin Ball lives going. We're going to have podcast episodes. And as our loyal followers and subscribers already know, sometimes I'll come out of these practices and I'll have some time and I'll just go live impromptu right there from camp, right there from East Rutherford, from the grass or from my car right outside the facility. And sometimes that's the best way to get the information directly to you guys. So when these Giants are practicing these days, keep an eye on when we're out there, keep an eye on my coverage, and understand that in these, early afternoons, you could have some impromptu live chats while you're at work, while you're at home, that you can check into and participate in, not just listen to what I have to say, but also participate just like you are here now. If I didn't remind you already, you can purchase a super chat or a super sticker to elevate your comment to the top of the chat. I really appreciate all that support. And if you don't want to pay for a super chat or super sticker, that's fine. Please just hit the like button while you're here. Those likes while we are live, especially, do a lot to push this channel and really tells the YouTube's algorithm sees that and takes it in and says, this is generating buzz. People are participating. And that tells Giants fans who aren't aware of what we're doing yet that we are here. It tells NFL fans that aren't aware that we're talking all NFL too. If it comes up, not just Giants, we're doing the whole league, because I am the NFL columnist, but also Giants beat writer for the New York Daily News. And, we're covering the whole NFL here. And we're going to be rolling all the way up to the Super Bowl and through it into the combine, draft season, you name it. You guys know we are here. And that's what we do here on Talkin Ball Live with Pat Leonard. Thank you so much to everybody for being here. Intel says, I called draft a damn QB. Tommy says, health and wealth to all. Hey, Tommy, what's going on? Pat, good to see you. Hope you and all the family are well. You too, Tommy. Good to see you. Thank you for saying that. Be real with me, bro. What week will Neal be available? 3 to 4? Oh, how many weeks, or what week in the regular season? I don't know that at this moment. I do know that clearly he was dialed back and put on like a new timetable from whenever that was, is what it looks like, right? Because I've just been around these situations enough. We'll see what Brian Dable and Joe Shane say when we ask them about it on Wednesday. To me, the timetable is whatever it takes to get him ready for week 1 at this point, is how I would operate if I were the Giants. No Met says, is Josh Azudu always going to be depth? I think Josh Azudu, like a lot of guys on this team, like he needs to prove that he can play and hold his own at the NFL level. Like the Giants feel like there's some talent there in the 3rd round pick from North Carolina and that he can do it. But so far we haven't seen it. Now, you could say about a lot of guys on this Giants team, and this happens with a lot of last place teams, right? You start questioning basically every guy on the roster, but that's warranted. You need to turn over every stone. And also, even if a guy is not surrounded by ideal conditions, you can't go to every player's lack of performance and excuse it by saying, the guy next to him wasn't very good, right? At a certain point, guys just need to put some good football on tape. And Josh is a great kid, great teammate, guy that I'm rooting for personally. I mean, I can tell you that right now. I want Josh Azudu to succeed and exceed expectations. I really like him as a person, and he'd be a great guy to have around here for a long time, but he has not proven yet that he can be a starter in the NFL. I will say the one excuse I will make for him was last offseason, they practiced him in a 3-man rotation at guard during training camp, and then they shoved him out at right tackle or at left tackle to protect a guy they just gave $40 million. I mean, like, he wasn't ready for it. He wasn't prepared for it. It was a terrible plan. Terrible plan by the organization. Terrible. Let's see. AJS says they need to stop babying Evan Neal. Have him earn the spot. No, definitely. Yeah, I agree with that. Don't baby him. I was saying more like, is he? Do you say our offensive line as a whole is just going to be better, in our opinion, with Jermaine Illuminor as the right tackle, and so we'll give Neal a shot at another spot in left guard, right? But sir, yeah, no, you don't hand it to him. I agree. Well, that AJS, that was what was interesting about Illuminor playing so much left guard in the spring. You just thought that there was going to be, like, Neal has to show you, and if he doesn't, Illuminor steps in. Not like, oh, Neal's definitely our right tackle. But part of the reason you hand it back to him if he wants it is because his ankle injury got misdiagnosed and that cost him, right? So you got to do right by him too. It's tricky. But certainly, listen, AJS, you and I are on the same page, which is, and I said this, I wrote, you guys are probably like this story I did in the New York Daily News about big picture goals that the Giants need to have for this training camp. And one of them was let merit reign. And what that means is, the best players should play. And, you want to get guys working together and chemistry started early, but you need to let people compete and the cream rise, and you need to play the guys who are the best players, not because they're your draft pick, not because you invested this in them in free agency. Now, we all know that in the NFL and in pro sports, when a guy gets signed big as a free agent or drafted highly as a draft pick, often they play no matter what because of that investment. And also, listen, they should typically, right? Like I've been on Tyler Nubin, for example, second round pick safety. You're going to spend that pick on a player there. You should need to see him. He should be on the field with all the experience he has in college and what investment you made in him. He should be helping the team. But also, you do have to balance that with, well, who's giving us the best chance to win, right? Now, of course, that doesn't reflect well sometimes on your investments at certain places if your bigger investments aren't outperforming the other players. So that reflects poorly on you. But if you're somebody who's interested in wins at the end of the day, you let the best players play, especially because you can't fool the locker room. You can't fool the players. The players know who's outperforming whom. My other keys were form the front five early. We've talked a lot about the offensive line tonight. Stay healthy. We talked about that. Stand their ground in relation to facing the Detroit Lions and the New York Jets in joint practices. Like last year, the Giants were the clearly inferior team on the field against the Detroit Lions. In a couple of days, we were out there outside Detroit. That was a fun trip. And I think, the Lions obviously are a more talented team. They're a team that's expected to contend for the Super Bowl, while the Giants are not. But, the Giants need to be, like I said, again, I sound like a broken record, but they have to be a prepared football team for week one. And one way they can do that is, like I said, practice differently, practice harder, practice in a way that gets you prepared for real football better than last year. The other thing, though, is preseason games and joint practices. Stand your ground, go toe-to-toe with these teams. These are two teams that are more talented in the Jets and the Lions than the Giants and are projected to do a lot more. Lions, certainly a projected Super Bowl contender, and Jets, a projected possible playoff team, depending on Aaron Rodgers. But the Giants, I think, you're looking at every single step for them and how they can get back to where they need to be. And that's another step I think that's meaningful, is how they come out of those things. Not to mention the Houston Texans preseason game, obviously an up-and-coming team and one that took the league by storm last year. And also another big picture goal, something I'm watching, is just targeting needs in free agency. Is it another tackle? Is it a corner? Is it a safety? Is it a running back? Right? All things to watch for the Giants. And that obviously goes all the way up to and through cut down day, when there's waiver claims possibly to be making. No Mets again checks in with a $5 super chat. Appreciate you, No Mets. He says, Pat, if you organize a bar meetup in Pittsburgh, can you advertise and let us know on YouTube? I'm definitely going to the game. No Mets, you ask, I'll deliver, man. That'll be, you know what? We're going to be doing these. We're going to be doing these every week, twice a week, these Talkin Ball lives. So, and I'm going to all these games. So this is something we can manage and talk about as we go. And I've talked to Joe about it. I think I talked to Authentic about it as well. But during training camp, hopefully going to have some of you guys, the fans, come on here and go live with me, make it a little bit fun and interactive. So we'll get that going as well. And that'll be a fun way, I think, hopefully to, to collaborate, create some fun content. That'll be really fun. Let's see. No Mets, thank you so much for that super chat again. Really appreciate that. Brett says, right on, Pat. How is Gunnar Olszewski? Didn't go on the PUP list. I mean, that doesn't mean he's not going to be sitting out practice, but I think that's that's a good sign, you would think. Of course, had the injury in the spring. Another player who Daboll said he expected to be ready for camp, so hopefully that one's correct, especially for the return game's sake and just having a guy that you can trust his hands back there. So based on what we saw come out of them reporting and taking physicals, no developments, which should be a good thing. Tommy says, blonde Joe Burrow. They better give Jamar Chase his money. Sad to see him play for just over $1 million a year. Yeah, blonde Joe Burrow, Slim Shady, huh? That caught me off guard, man. I got to admit, that caught me off guard. I mean, there were years when I was younger where, like, 2 out of every 3 kids or guys were walking around with that type of hair. Now you see it and I will, flash back to the early 2000s. That was really something. No Met says Giants should be able to beat both teams, right? On paper, at least. The Giants are better than the Vikings and Commanders, right? No Mets, I think the way you should think of the Giants is when they play a team that is not projected to be great, you have to think of them as all on the same or similar level. So, the Commanders, of course, their offensive line is a huge question mark, and the Giants' defensive line should be their strength of their team. So that could be a mismatch that favors the Giants and leads them to be the better team. Then again, Jaden Daniels is a total wild card, might turn their offense on its head, and with some better coaching on defense, it's hard to be worse than what Jack Del Rio and Ron Rivera put together on defense in Washington, especially at the end. So those are the dynamics that can shift it. The Vikings, again, quarterback play, Sam Darnold, JJ McCarthy. Can the Giants, even though Justin Jefferson and the Vikings can have an explosive offense there, is the quarterback good enough, right, to take advantage of the Giants defense? And then you're going up against a Vikings defense that, question marks. I mean, it's gotten better, but still needs to get better. So where will that stand? So, but I think you break down those X's and O's, you see reasons why the Vikings would be favored in mismatches against the Giants and vice versa. You see reasons why the Giants look better than the Commanders in certain areas and vice versa. So I think that those look like teams that are on the same level. Now, no Mets, to your point, the Giants have to beat those teams. Now you have to come out of that stretch 1-1 at minimum, right? Hopefully, based on how the schedule lays out and what the Giants want to accomplish, that's 2-0, based on how their schedule proceeds from there. But that's a 1-1 at minimum for the Giants to feel anything about what their season's going to be. That's for sure. Brett says, what is your running back depth chart, Turbo or Corbin? I like them both. I like Jashaun Corbin a lot. I think his time is overdue. His opportunity is overdue. I think he's earned opportunities in the past that then haven't been afforded to him. This is what I mean by let merit reign. Like if a guy has a great preseason, put him on the active roster and give him carries in week 1 and see how he does. Stuff drives me crazy. I mean, he was even, when he was an undrafted rookie, they used him as a punt returner and a kick returner in the preseason. And he did, actually, I think it was kick returns. He had 2 really good kickoff returns and then nothing, they didn't give him that chance in the regular season. It's just this stuff. My running back depth chart, to answer your question though, this guy, Jacob Sailors, I think is somebody to watch, see how he turns in as a downhill runner. But really the problem, Brett, is what you're saying is that it sounds like Singletary and a bunch of guys. And that's just not a solution to a position. I think Corbin is the guy who you're looking for to be more than maybe what the outside noise is giving him credit for in the mix of what they could be. Iconic says, was the move now that Neal is on PUP? Yes, he's on physically unable to perform, Iconic. That means that he will start, not practicing, but as soon as he passes a physical, he can come off of that list and practice with the team. I think at this point, the priority has to be to get him and any player in that situation ready for week 1 first and go from there. But obviously, this guy, if he's going to be a factor for you, you need him on the field working with his teammates. Joey B, Pat on the patio at practice. That's right, man. That's right, man. I fit right in. Iconic says, can you ask Joe why he doesn't do more contract with void years on superstars like the Eagles? Yeah, no, that's a good question. That might be more of a question even for me to ask him on the side or, because, I guess coming up here at the start of camp, it'll be more about how things are starting off, what the team looks like on the field today, how they're managing certain gaps in their roster, what free agents are they looking at, those kind of things, those kind of conversations. But I think that's worth asking, Iconic, for sure. That's a really good question. I do know, I can tell you, having talked to Shane and the Giants about this over the years, when he came in, managing money was they wanted to stop kicking money down the road. And void years are one way to spread money out and spread cap hits out. and spread it out, past the point at which the player is here, but just getting it to a manageable sum for you know, for the now and the future. And the Giants were, at least when Shane first got here, they were trying not to do that. They were trying to avoid kicking money down the road because they felt like it had happened too often prior to them arriving here. Now, obviously, the funny part about that is it happened with the same financial guys who still run the Giant salary cap. So that was funny to me. Who do you blame? It always comes down to who do you blame and why. Those are always fun questions. But I think iconic, mainly it had to do initially at the outset with trying to get the Giants salary cap in order because it was a mess and they were really hamstrung at first. I think you'd probably see as the years go on, if this regime steadies the ship and gets things rolling in the right direction, and you get in the position where there are star players and key players who you feel really strongly about, and you already have a foundation built and they're the part of the foundation, and you don't mind, you need to pay them, and then you don't mind creating those voids to create that space, so you can get in a position like the Eagles where you're not a team that's scrambling, just trying to get back to 500 and also strapping yourself cap wise in future years with void years on players who you're still waiting to see if you're going to commit to them. Like the Giants still need more of those players to do those deals, if that makes sense. But that's a really good question, but that's something I'll continue to harp on with him and ask him about. Joey B says, how the heck do you manage to do all these jobs, man? You're super, Pat. Thanks, Joe. Yeah, a lot of practice, a lot of work. Sometimes you make mistakes to learn how to do it right. Sometimes you go to a game and, like, covering these games, for example, at first, maybe you cover a game and you don't bring binoculars, and then you realize there's things you're missing and you can't get to. And it's like, okay, how do I get to that? How do I see that? And then you bring binoculars, and then you say to yourself, okay, what happened on that play? I thought I saw this, but oh wait, I'm not listening to the broadcast. I'm only watching it. So now you start putting your headphones in your ears. You start putting the iPad game on so that you can listen to the broadcast on delay while you're watching it. Now you're seeing it here, seeing it there. You see every play 3 times. You also have people, by the way, during the game texting you, telling you things, checking in, reading your tweets, clarifying things for you. Like it's awesome. Brett says, how is a Zudu's hearing? I like him too. I don't know the answer to that, Brett. I don't know the answer to that. Tommy says, does the team coaching staff, ownership, players, team as a whole, do you see a sense of more urgency, better focus, more want for talent, elevation, and self-motivation on all levels of the organization? There's definitely urgency. Trading for Brian Burns and giving him that contract, like I said at the time, was an aggressively desperate move. Same thing went like when they traded for Darren Waller. It was like people had to recognize you don't rebuild by trading for 30-year-old tight ends. Like this is a team trying to win, showing urgency. And I know they didn't sign him, at least at this stage, as we sit here talking now, but like bringing Greg Van Roten, a 34-year-old guard, in for a visit, like this is where the Giants are. They're not, this is not a like wait and see, come see us in 2027 and we'll be on track. Like, yes, they're trying to add building blocks, but there is urgency for sure. A lot of people's jobs are on the line, Tommy. A lot of people's jobs are on the line. Better focus, more. They always, the players always want to win badly. The coaches always want to win badly. I think there's just a lot of urgency because, it really did get so bad last year. It really did get so bad last year, and they really do need to turn it around and show some competence fast. So I guess the answer to that is yes. We'll see if in practice they can fix what they got wrong, learn their lessons, and adjust accordingly. Brett M says, oh yeah, cream always rises to the top. Macho man. That's right. Tommy says, situational football awareness. Hope it's back in the building. That's for sure. Preseason game here, Houston, Texas. Definitely going to see what my H-Town Stroud and company got going, and hope to see my Giants with an improved team and game plan. Really looking forward to that trip end game, Tommy, because yeah, the Giants can learn a lot from the Texans. Unfortunately, one of the things people can learn is go get a better quarterback. So the Giants hope that Daniel Jones is going to become this year that better quarterback. But that is, of course, the number one lesson to learn. Joe says, Pat, you really have no hope for us. We're going 11-6. I said it. I'm just calling it like I see it based on, what typically goes down like around this team and how they operate and what they have to endure, along with how the roster looks and the questions they have on it. I'm just putting it all together. Again, I've been wrong, right? I've been wrong. You guys remember me in the clown face 2 years ago when they went to the playoffs and I predicted them to win, who knows, 5 games, whatever it was, or 3 games. And I totally admitted I was a clown and I was wrong. So, maybe I'll have to do that again. Joe says Wandale is going to have a breakout year. Hey, that'd be great to see. AJS says, I like Joe Shane, but he needs some of these picks to show something big this season. That is for sure. You just need to see some of these players start panning out. Tommy says 11-6. Yikes. They must be pushing the ball down the field early and often. And that's really what you need from Malik Neighbors, right? And I wrote this for the New York Daily News, but as much as he's an exciting building block, and that is what you hope he's going to be, right? You hope Malik Neighbors is going to be a building block for years to come too. That's part of the reason you draft that player. But another reason you draft that player is to give Daniel Jones and the offense a weapon to score more points now, to be a better team, to be a better offense. The offense was non-existent last year, decimated the team, let the defense down, let the entire organization down, the entire offensive operation. And so, when we talk about Joe Shane's picks need to hit, when Tommy says, okay, if they're going to win 11 games, they need to push the ball down the field early and often. Yes, exactly. That's the recipe. Pass rush gets after it on defense. Neighbors ignites the offense and helps Daniel Jones grow. And they score enough points where that defensive line gets pass rushing opportunities late in games. That is the recipe. Tommy says Tyron Tracy is going to be big time if the play calling allows him the opportunity. He's going to do well after Singletary kills it. Good duo. Yeah, I'm curious to see what kind of breakaway speed Tracy shows. He's shown some wiggle on the field. And I know he had some, big plays in college, but just want to see how his speed stacks up against NFL defenses, because wasn't sure if he was exactly like a burner watching him in the spring. Barbara says, our defense looks good. Schedule isn't that tough. I can see 9 or 10 wins, but that still doesn't make us a contender like 2022. I think one of the biggest differences between how I see the Giants and a lot of people do is I think the defense is going to regress significantly. I hope I'm wrong. Like I said, for them to be a good team, the pass rush needs to be the strength of the team. But you need leads to pass rush late in games, have those ample pass rushing opportunities for Burns, Lawrence, and Thibodeau. I think that's a big thing, a big deal. And also I just think there's a lot of personnel questions, and the system, are they players going to pick it up? It's going to be a different system. I think they're going to give up more yards, like a bend but don't break idea. Not sure how well that's going to work. They're going to have to stop the run. Do they have another defensive tackle and someone to rotate with Lawrence to help do that? I just have way more questions about the defense. Like, I think a lot of people are excited because Okereke was a good ad last year, that you have Dex already, obviously, and then you make a huge investment in Brian Burns. But I just think there's way, 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 way too many questions and unsettled, whether it's position battles or just, like hoping that Deonte Banks goes from an encouraging rookie season to a certified number 1 lockdown corner. Like, these are things that could happen, but they're all projections, right? So I just feel a little bit differently about the defense. I'm waiting to see rather than feeling like they're an obvious upgrade. I don't see that. I think Martindale's system and the way that they attacked opponents' pressures and got to quarterbacks and used personnel properly, blitz guys who could do that very well, Simmons, Pinnock, right, McKinney in that mix, tie for the league lead in turnovers forced. Not perfect by any means, but I just feel like they did a lot with a little, and I'm not sure that's an easy thing to replicate. No Met says, Pat, you should make YouTube shorts if everything you've just described about being game day prepared, like with binoculars. Really good insight. Yeah, that's a good idea. I think I'm going to do that. give people like a window. Actually, there is a series I'm going to start. So I have a bunch of ideas in the hopper, but I'm going to start a series about, and I've done one or two, but like an on the road series where I like describe things that I see out on the road, or I do like fun videos to show you certain experiences or tell stories about what has happened to me when I've been on the road covering the Giants, or, just as a reporter in general. So look for that on YouTube Shorts too. That should be fun. Christian says, no lie, the roster was a mess from a talent and cap standpoint when Joe Schoen took over. But this is a big year 3 for that draft class, looking at Flott and Robinson to have big seasons. Yeah, no, for sure. Justin Pugh's ship has definitely sailed. He had several chances. Enough is enough, says Barbara. Iconic says, do you think we should have given the Patriots the once-in-a-lifetime deal to them in order to get Drake May? Iconic, I think, the way that Elliott Wolf threw out, what did he say? A 1, a 2, a 3, and then another 1 and a 2. And then he goes, I'm just exaggerating, but like, he said those 5 picks, right? Like that's a lot, that's him. That was him saying to Joe Schoen, like, we're not interested in trading. And eventually he came back and said, yeah, like we basically are going to pick a quarterback at 3 if he's there. So, Iconic, I think that has to do with how much you believe in the quarterback. I mean, the story, obviously, and they got into it a little bit during the episode, but obviously not only did Ernie Accorsi make the Eli trade, but he also refused to include Osi Umenyiora in it. And so there was going to get the player that they wanted, but there was also, having a certain type of player and investment and talent on your roster that you weren't going to surrender, and believing that and sticking to your guns and maybe losing out on that trade because of that. And so I think that's a good example of like how you have to gauge it. There's also, remember, they wanted a quarterback there if they could get one, but the general manager and the coach do need to win games this year and show some progress. And I think that, Joe Schoen said it, I think in the first episode of Hard Knocks, Joe Schoen said something along the lines of, how like we need to get this rolling, we need to get this going kind of thing. And I think going back to the idea of urgency that I think it was Tommy had asked, I don't think this is not an operation where they're sitting here, as much as people who sell the teams, maybe some people around the team's preferred narrative and say like, this is just a rebuild and think of the future and not today. Like, they are not thinking like that, and they don't have the luxury to operate like that, this coach and general manager. So I think that when you talk about that home run deal and emptying the coffers for that quarterback and not getting a player that helps them be better on the field, I think that factors into it too. Iconic. But, listen, if you fully wholeheartedly believe in a quarterback who's going to change your organization, then there's nothing too crazy, I think. But I do think that our Corsi story with Eli Manning and OC is a good anecdote about kind of the balance that maybe you have to strike. Like to think about it rationally in the moment. Tommy says, better QB we all want, but JJ McCarthy isn't beating out Darnold. Drake isn't beating out Brissett, and Mariota will get the start. So Jones is the best option. Dable has to just keep Kafka away from play calling. Oh, so now we're blaming Kafka for the play calling last year and for all the offense. So that'll be interesting to see. Again, that's the part of the unknown about, hey, Dable as the play caller, will that improve things, right? Mariota starting? You think Mariota is going to start week 1? I do not believe that is going to happen in Washington. That would shock me. Candyman says, seeing Hard Knocks tonight, they preview that Giants thought about trading 6 for 11 and 20. Wasn't that the trade I suggested? Candyman. Dude, Candyman was on it. Yes, it was. Yes, it was. And they did entertain, the potential trades back. Who was the team that I reported had tried to trade up? The Colts, I believe. And there were people saying that maybe they were trying to trade up for a skill player like a Bowers. So yes, you did, Candyman. Yeah, Candyman was on it during draft season. That was one of at least like 3 things that Candyman threw out there scenarios-wise that came to pass. Intel sees a 5-12 season. Joey says, Pat, was means what? Pat, 2 hours as always. Thanks. Amazing. Thank you, bro. And look forward to seeing you Sunday. To you and all the Talkin Ball live fam. Thank you so much, Joey. Joe, thanks for promoting this on your Instagram as well. Bringing Giants Nation over here, reminding people that we are live here on the Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard YouTube channel at PL on NFL. That's my handle everywhere, pretty much Instagram, TikTok, Threads, YouTube, PL on NFL. On X, I'm P Leonard NYDN. That's the New York Daily News, P Leonard NYDN. Let's see. AJS says, so you're worried that they don't have a CB2, slot corner, and DT2. Let's see. CB2, yes. I think Cordell's Flott, really, ideally, I would like to see Flott being the slot corner and then get CB2. And then you have Phillips competing at slot depth, right? That kind of thing. Yes, the defensive tackle too. Probably inside linebacker depth as well is something they need. Safety, I'm just curious to see how that all shakes out. And, also AJS, just personnel-wise, like Jason Pinnock was an encouraging player in Wink's system. Will he be the same player in Shane Bowen's system? Will he be used the same way? Is he, last year, Xavier McKinney was your top safety. This year, is Pinnock that guy? Like, is he going to take that next step? Is Tyler Nubin or Belton going to take that step and be a true number 2 safety? Is Deonte Banks going to be a true number 1? Like, to me, it's not just, is Thibodeau going to round his game all, full circle, take the sacks, take the, run defense and the little things he was doing as a rookie and put it all together. To me, it's part personnel, like you said. It's also just, there are projections and hopes for what can take this defense to a different level that we need to see actually happen. But yeah, as far as personnel wise, corner, like outside corner, D tackle, inside linebacker depth, at minimum. Barbara says, I'm hoping for the best, Pat. I love the Giants. Yeah, I'm hoping for a great season too and a fun season, Barbara. Too much losing too early is tough. Bowen, let's see. We'll have Pinnock, McLeod, Banks, Nubin flying around the field. D-line is the key. They will get to the quarterback with only 4. That's going to be our X factor. We really have a good front 3, at least Dex, Thibodeau, and Burns. That's what has to happen. Yeah, Nick McLeod, I think, factor into that mix as well. I do think Nick has deserved more of an opportunity as I knock my Talkin Ball Giant big hat down. Let's see. Get to a few more questions here. Barbara says we're going to have to give up a Godfather offer for a quarterback sooner or later. Maybe, unless you're high enough that you can pick one without trading up, which of course would mean a difficult season. Yeah, all good, Brett. Don't worry about it. No problem. Yeah, Zudu is a good guy. Overcame a stutter and a favorite teammate of the Giants. All good. Tommy says if Jones reads the safety and slot slant to either throw it or bait safety and shorten up his stance on dropbacks, boxer style, bounce on feet, more balance and faster ability to use core and quick twitch. Tommy, for one, sounded like Daniel Jones' new quarterback coach there. I love it. Eli Manning's don't grow on trees, Barbara points out, especially the durability portion. Like that was a big key. Bill says, you're still going. I had to dip to eat dinner. Wow. Hey, you guys make this go, Bill. And thank you for your patience at the beginning as well, while I was on the phone and checking out Hard Knocks so I could, bring you guys the best intel that I can. Bill says, we have Gano back. We're going to do better this year. I guarantee it, as they say. I love it. Iconic says, do you think we should have done more quarterback homework on more than the top 3? I'm wondering what Dable could have done with Milton. It doesn't seem like we will be top 3 in the draft. I thought Milton was interesting too. I was surprised, as you guys know, that even after they didn't pick one in the first round, that they didn't take one somewhere else. I really thought they were going to go get one. I think it again speaks to them needing to add players to the actual roster to help them win some games. They did more work on the top three iconic. They just didn't end up seeing them in the realm of their number 6 pick, like some other teams valued JJ McCarthy, Michael Penix Jr., Bo Nix, right? So they did ample homework on those guys. They just didn't rate them that high. Of course, I kind of, Michael Penix Jr. is, I mean, if any of you guys have ever seen him throw in person, I mean, you know what I'm talking about. But like, if you see Michael Penix Jr. throw in person for 5 minutes, you just look at the person next to you and go, I'd be fine with that. Right. I know I'm not saying he's a perfect player, but I'm just saying, the Giants did a lot of work on these guys and passed on guys like McCarthy and Penix. It'd be interesting to see. AJS says, I do like Joe Schoen's thought process on spending on premium positions. Yeah, listen, that's something, you can get behind as far as like analytics based, doing the research, believing in certain ways to build a team. You just don't, being, and that's his prerogative, and it could honestly work out. It's worked in certain places. But I was just going to say, like, when I watch the Saquon stuff, it just feels like he's talking about, the 27-year-old running backs, and then he's signing Singletary, but getting rid of Barkley. And it's like, well, you can't, can you have a principle and then kind of break it just because you feel like it, right? Or do you really stick to it? Now, obviously, they didn't invest in Singletary what they invested in what they would have had to pay Barkley, so that was part of it. But, I think also, like, think about this: they were ready to, go to the second day value of the running back market, and it turns out they're signing Singletary right out of the gate on day one of free agency. Like, we got to get a running back. Or you let Xavier McKinney walk and you don't pay him, a homegrown player, and then you draft a safety in round 2 because you created that need by letting a player go. And yes, he's on a rookie contract, but you're still using a high valuable asset on a safety. Like, if you don't believe in that position's value, I don't know. Yes, rookie contract, not a veteran contract, but still, you see the value of the position. Like, it's not an insignificant position. I don't know. Julian Love, by the way, top 100 voted by players around the NFL. Another safety that Joe Schoen let walk. Barbara says, good show, Pat. Thank you, Barbara. Thanks for participating as always and being here and supporting. Tommy says, what do you think the Giants' game plan should be going into camp and getting ready for preseason and season? What steps are prioritizing for you? Tommy, my number one is to have these guys play real football. Whether that means more preseason snaps than some guys are used to getting, whether it means not giving so many days off to veterans, whether it means how they cadence when they put them in pads, practicing, practicing like you play, like practicing all the things they're going to need to be good at pad level, taking on blocks, working together as a unit. If you're the offensive line, let's say, I just think, this is not a regime that I want to see having players in sandals out on the grass doing walkthroughs when they could put in a few more reps in their pads that day. That's, I guess, where I'm coming from. It's about, yes, you're managing players' bodies. You're trying to be smart about that. You're trying to manage, and you do have to listen to players and their bodies and work with them collaboratively. But, be the boss. If you're Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen, step up, run the kind of camp that shows the team we're nowhere close to where we need to be, and here's the way we're going to get there. So that's my overall point there, Tommy. Bill says, thanks again for the show, Pat. Don't worry about being late. We had fun in the chat either way. Thanks, Bill. And Brett says, everyone is saying Daniel Jones needs to be able to stay on the field. If he wasn't a mobile quarterback, he would have torn his ACL 3 years ago. Interesting point. Yeah, I mean, it's the stay healthy thing is kind of a catch-22 because, yes, he's been injured a lot lately, but also, like, they didn't build an offensive line around him last year that could protect him, and that was the general manager. I mean, like, you paid a quarterback $40 million a year, and then you couldn't protect him. And don't tell me the injuries were the only reason. I mean, your roster's your roster. Like, figure it out. Other teams figure it out. I do think though the neck, obviously at this point we're not really talking about it, but the 2 neck injuries, that's something to, as far as injury prone and guys injured a lot, like that's what I think of. I don't think of the knee as much. The knee is more about like how you can move and mobility and prepared for the game. Yeah. But as far as being injury prone, like guys tear their ACLs all the time and come back, they have surgery, whatever. The neck and whether that becomes an issue again. And, do you suffer a third significant neck injury? Like that's more where my mind goes on that. AJS says, I heard a lot last year that training camp was very soft and it showed how they started against Dallas. They didn't look prepared. Exactly. That is exactly what happened. Soft training camp, looked unprepared, got their asses kicked by Dallas in prime time at MetLife Stadium, 40-0 shutout. So that's it, Tommy. That's I know you're probably asking for more details, but basically that is what I'm saying is, the specifics of it is less what I'm, the specifics of it is what the coaching staff needs to figure out about how to teach their new techniques if they're using on the offensive line, teach the system of the defense with Shane Bowen is new, a lot of new coaches on both sides of the ball. A lot of collaboration that happens, with the front office, like Joe Shane, very involved in the roster, the game day rosters, right? So all that happening. And AJS is right. It set the tone for the season that they weren't ready for the Dallas Cowboys last year in week 1. And so how you practice in camp is how you prepare. Michael says, what's going on, Pat? Just got home from work. Michael, I'm sorry to do this to you, but we've been live for 2 hours and I'm going to have to dip because we are on the eve of the first Giants training camp practice open to the media. And Joe Shane and Brian Dable are scheduled to talk at 9:15 a.m. Eastern. And usually they go a little bit earlier than what they schedule if they can. So it's going to be a full day. It's going to be a great day. But Michael, if you have a Giants related question before I leave, drop it in the queue and I will answer it before I go. I'll do a quick ad read here and then I will answer your question if you have one before I get going. Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard is brought to you by the Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, a natural extract loaded with anti-inflammatory, immune-boosting antioxidants and heart-healthy compounds. You can easily pour this natural liquid supplement into any of your favorite drinks, like I put it in my coffee every morning, and immediately feel the difference. I personally have felt a post-workout-like energy boost with Boom. Chaga also has the ability to lower cholesterol, reduce inflammation, and improve immune and heart health with its beta-glucans and antioxidants. Go to boomchaga.com today to place your first order. And if you use the discount code TalkinBall25 or you access it through the QR code on your screen, you'll get 25% off your first subscribe and save order. Right now, that means a month's supply costs you only $30. Start feeling the difference today at boomchaga.com. Also brought to you by BetOnline and by Estate 98 Coffee. It's an Essencia Day cafe from El Salvador. Dates back to 1798. I drink it all the time when I'm doing the Talkin Ball podcast. Here's the Estate 98 tumbler right here. Let's see. AJS says, great show, Pat. Thanks for answering all the questions. You got it. Bill says, get to sleep, Pat. Bring us the news. Michael says, no question. Have fun tomorrow. Appreciate you, Michael. And Iconic says, great show, Pat. O-line, O-line, O-line. That's my prayers for the Giants. Well said, Iconic. We're out on that. See you guys next time on Talkin Ball Live. Remember, check the YouTube channel, YouTube Shorts, and my X, Threads, and Instagram accounts, TikTok, where I'm posting analyses, insights, news, updates from training camp. We'll be out there every day with the Giants and also covering the whole league. So we look forward to bringing you the latest on your favorite team and favorite sport. Brett M says they should practice in an Olympic-sized pool or let Joe Judge run practices. Run. If they ran like they did under Judge, does Andrew Thomas get hurt in the Dallas game? Brett, exactly. As much as, depending on who you talk to, you'll hear people who will blame Joe Judge for injuries and how he practiced, and you will hear people say, you know what, maybe this team needs a little of that again as well. Giant topic, what's up? Getting out of here for training camp practice number 1. But if you missed what we did, if you missed this Talkin Ball Live, remember, it always stays posted on the YouTube channel at PL on NFL. You can do the rewind and rewatch. And it also goes on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, where you can listen and download there as you get ready for training camp out there on the field. Guys, thank you so much. Brett, thank you. We'll see you guys next time on Talkin Ball Live with Pat Leonard. Take care.